think this is the core trait you really need as an entrepreneur, or even just as anyone in general, right? Is you need to be curious. Really, you need to be curious and you need to be excited about the unknown and really wanting to dive deep and learn about it, right? That's the only way you'll stay alive in this game.
What will you do to unlock innovation? In today's fast-paced world, innovation might not be enough. Tomorrow's pioneers of change will need to be agile, able to adapt, and committed like never before. Your host, Sannah Vinding, invites you to listen in and join business leaders from around the world as they share their visions for success in our future business challenges.
Welcome to Mind Innovation. I'm your host, Sannah Vinding. I'm always excited to learn. And in today's podcast, we're going to talk about the challenges around entrepreneurship. I want to welcome Eric Lowe. He's the CEO and co-founder of Krado. He's an experienced entrepreneur skilled in software engineering and biotechnology. So welcome, Eric. I've been following you and Krado in the news lately, and I'm so excited to have you on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on your podcast and tell you more about what I've learned, and I'll give the pretty and ugly side of entrepreneurship. So look at the real story here.
Yeah, right. That's both sides of it. So Krado is a really interesting concept, and it's a plant care startup using data from sensors and guidance from expert growers. And my background, right? These are fake IKEA plants, so I need your help. So tell me about how does it start? The help. Tell me more.
So my background is in biotech and in software engineering, and how I got into plants was as a hobbyist, right? So I just got into plants and I was quickly humbled is the real true story of it all. So, from my experience in the lab, I was growing things that you can't even see, macrophages, cell culture lines, and those are all happy. And here I am struggling with plants where I'm just like, what's going on with you? Like, What do you need? I give you water, give you light. Like, why aren't you happy? And then this quickly entered into when I was studying computer science and getting my master's. And I thought, what's happening is I don't have insights. I don't have any data. I don't have access to what's happening at the soil root level. So there's got to be a sensor that can get me that data. And at the time, there really wasn't a high quality sensor out there that could stream to my phone and give me this real time data. So I thought, what a great project for me to work on. And so I built it. Then I thought, there's got to be a database out there that has essentially all the information my sensor needs to give me optimal settings and environments. And so this can be really brainless. Yeah. And when I went to hunt for that, all the databases are empty. And that blew my mind, especially from a biotech standpoint, from a data standpoint, right? We're in the data age. We collect data on everything. And here we have one of the most important things in life. And we don't have any data on it. And so that immediately was something that caught my interest. Yeah.
Nice. And you just had a funding. Can you tell me more about, what that was about and where you are in your startup?
Or for the Indigo campaign or fundraising?
Yeah.
Okay. So we just barely launched our Indigo campaign. And we did that in an insane amount of time, which I would not recommend to anyone. So we got it up and running in 3 weeks. I would recommend anyone who's going to do this to give yourself 3 to 4 months, because it is not worth the stress that we put ourselves under. And we did that for a couple of reasons. One is we were heading into our fundraising round. And so we really wanted to quickly show investors that we had a lot of traction and a lot of demand for our product. But Indiegogo crowdfunding is its own beast on its own, right? It's not just as simple as what I just described at all. But we made it through. We hit our goal on the Indigo campaign. It's still live. There's about, I think, 9 days left. So if anyone who listens to this podcast still have time, you can still get in and be one of our early adopters and testers and backers, and we would appreciate that a lot. But so the Indiegogo was one of our strategies, one, to really get market validation, right? It's really hard on the business side to get that type of data through surveys and customer interviews, right? You can ask questions about pricing all day long. You can talk about, copy, messaging, all that, but it really, what we found is it was generating a lot of noise. And at the end of the day, we needed a credit card, right? Like, are people actually willing to put money down for this? And one of the best ways to do that is through a crowdfunding campaign.
Yeah. And that's a new way. And I've seen it over the last couple of years. So it's not that new, but it's a good way to validate, as you just said, right? That you actually have customer that want to test it out and want to see this to come in and help their plants as well, right? So,
Exactly, yeah.
you're saving the world here. No, what about? So, I'm sure, right, because of the whole pandemic, right? We are almost out of it. It will still be there. It's not that it's gone. But having a startup under the pandemic, how did that affect you? And did you have to pivot in different ways?
So it's actually funny. So I think a lot of people intuitively think starting a startup during bad economic times is the worst time to do it. But if you actually look through history, it's actually the best time to start companies. So if you actually look at when the last event of economic recession was, it was 2008.
Yeah.
Right? That was the mortgage bubble. That's what collapsed.
Yeah.
And if you actually look at all the companies that were started then and where they are today, so about 10 years later, or, roughly 10 years later.
Yeah.
They have all, that was the latest batch of companies that went IPO, right? That was the Uber, that was Uber, Airbnb, DoorDash, Grubhub, right? All these big companies, and they all started during the worst times possible. And so it is a little backwards, but it actually is true, right? And we can look at it historically and in now. So it's actually a great time. It's not a good time when you're already operating, right? When you're like an established business and something like that happens, that's like really bad because you're more rigid, right? But for a startup, the whole value of a startup is you're nimble, right? You're light, you're on your feet, you can learn, you can adapt. And when you have rapid change like that, so one of the other side of the pandemic was the great resignation, right? We had a lot of people start changing jobs, reevaluating, and we benefited. We got the employees that are leaving, right? We've been able to grow our team very successfully with very low effort from that. And so for us, we've benefited pretty well.
That's good. Did you had to pivot then, or is maybe just in general but because you learn every day, right? So what kind of changes have you had to make for Krado from you had that first, start saying, the idea on the little napkin to you are today?
I am a master at pivoting. And so, so the original idea for Krado had nothing to do with plants. The original idea was blockchain plus electronic medical records.
Yeah. Okay, so
and here we are today working on plants. So let me tell you about pivoting, right? But the lesson here is pivoting is critical for any startup. You have to be able to pivot. You cannot be locked in with the original idea, right? Blockchain with electronic health records is a great idea, but the market demand isn't there. There's a lot of friction points. And more importantly, there have been very big people, Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, Apple, Google, that have all tried this and they all failed. And so that it was like, what am I going to do that the guys with all the resources and wealth in the world couldn't do? Like, what am I going to contribute here? So we pivoted and we kept looking and exploring all sorts of different things we could do with blockchain, right? So we were looking at real estate, title, genetics, automotive. And what we deemed on our end was just the technology at the time isn't ready. And I still don't think it's quite ready yet for mass adoption. And so, we were looking at, well, what else can we do? And the other, that's where we start talking about our own personal pain points. And I was talking about my issues with plants. My co-founder was talking about issues with his lawn. And I was like, oh, hey, like we're kind of doing the same problem. And I already have something built that I just created on the side that my wife thought would be a great product. But I was like, oh, like hardware is hard. So I don't want to really go down that road. And here I am going down that road.
Yeah, no, that's fun. That's fun. So I'm sure that's a lot of learning process, even though you're saying, right, it started in one area and now it is over here, right, with the whole startup. So how do you as a person, how do you learn?
So, I think this is the core trait you really need as an entrepreneur, or even just as anyone in general, right? Is you need to be curious. Really, you need to be curious and you need to be excited about the unknown and really wanting to dive deep and learn about it, right? That's the only way you'll stay alive in this game. And it's one of those, right? Prior to this, I was technical, right? I came from biotech. I was a scientist and a software engineer. Right, as nerdy and as like focused as you possibly could be. And I had no idea what entrepreneurship, I didn't even know what accelerators were. I didn't know like what UI UX meant. I didn't even know what like customer experience meant. I didn't know what product development meant. I didn't know any of that stuff. And I learned all that within the last year, right? And
Yeah.
it was a lot of learning. But for me, I'm hungry to learn. And what's great is we have the internet, we have books, there's so many free
Yeah.
resources out there today that requires nothing but just your time.
Yeah.
But that's the best investment you could possibly make, because everything you're learning is not only compounding, right? So you're just starting to get better and better and better.
Yeah.
But it's also allowing you to see patterns. You're picking up on patterns across different domains, right? So from the science background, we obviously know the scientific method really well. And as I'm reading business books, they're just trying to teach me the scientific method. And I'm like, oh, like, yeah, I get this. Like, is that it? Is that the secret?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, okay. Well, then we got it, right? And
Yeah.
and then we were learning marketing. What are they doing? Teaching me the scientific method about marketing. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay. And so it's really just like, we just need to learn the terms that they use, and then we're good to go, right? And then essentially, but the core skill sets are always still the same. And that's what's really cool, is you start seeing that. And then really at the other side is, don't be afraid to fail, right? Failing means you're pushing hard. Failing means you're learning, right? No one learned a bike just by hopping on it. You got to fall a bunch of times. Same with skiing, right? You got to fall down the mountain to learn how to ski. And if you can do those two things, you can do anything, right? And that's actually what I'm trying to teach my team internally, is these core traits. And that's actually what I want to see from everyone, is because I can't have, right now we're early, we're scrappy, right? No one has a dedicated role for a specific project. It's like, I need you to do this tomorrow. And it's going to be completely different than something that you're working on. And I'm sorry it's jarring, but this is our life. This is how it is.
Yeah. No. So with your team, how do you keep fostering like a creative environment? Because that means that they need to wear a lot of hats. And I'm sure you're all entrepreneurs, right? Because you have that drive, but still to get everybody, to get the right team and set them together and have this creative environment. How do you keep it going, and how do you feed it?
So yeah, I think one, it starts with hiring. So I approach hiring really differently and uniquely, and this is a complete experimentation. And I'm sure you'll see a book talking about it someday down the line of whether it worked or not. But the way I actually pick individuals to be part of Krado is I get to know them, and I actually don't even focus so much on what their previous background experience is, and more so what they would like to do in the future and what their ambition and passion is, and are they curious and growth driven? That's it. Those are all the metrics I look. And then in my head, I'm trying to see like, okay, where can I place you in this company and give you a challenge? So every single person is challenged in the company, right? Like everything I give is a little bit outside your comfort zone. I'm not giving you something that's just like, oh yeah, it's super easy. If that's the case, then I probably can outsource it to a contractor and just get it done. But everything is outside of everyone's comfort zone, and it's designed to make you feel uncomfortable, because that's what you need to get comfortable with, which is, I know, ironic. But as you get used to that, then you start developing the ability to learn, and you're essentially building blocks on how you start solving problems and really activating that part of your brain again, right? Of creative problem solving, and then activating resources, and I give you autonomy, right? I want to find intrinsically motivated individuals. I'm giving you autonomy, I'm giving you the ability to master, and I'm giving you ability to also manage your own time. And I'll be there to give you guidance, but you're there to kind of figure it out, right? Or else, like, if I'm there to figure it out, then I don't need you. But the other side is I also expose everyone to every aspect of the company, right? I don't keep the fundraising efforts just to the core team, right? I tell everyone where we are with our fundraising. I tell everyone where we are with manufacturing. I keep everyone up to date on every aspect of the company, simply because I want everyone to see, why am I making decisions I'm making, right? So I don't need to catch you up. You get it. Like, you saw like, oh, that's because like, this is why we're here. And two, it's also so that I want every single person in my company to be able to almost operate on their own, right? As their own individual company within Krado. And then eventually, what I would love to see is that one day you've grown and you're ready to fly out of our nest, and you can start your own company. And now you know all the key parts of what it takes to build your own company. And guess who the first check will come from? It'll be from you.
That's good. So, you know a lot, right? I'm really impressed here. So, but sometimes you can also feel alone. I'm pretty sure, not you, but I'm just saying in general, right? As an entrepreneur, and you need to be stepping out and of your comfort zone and not be ashamed to say, hey, I need help, even if it's a mentor or some guidance, because you need to get better. So, what have you done if you've been in this situation of saying, if it's feeling alone or going and say, hey, I need some mentors here? What have you done?
So I would say the loneliness isn't so much asking for help in that sense, right? Like we have a really good network. Like if I need help with something, I'm not afraid to do that. The loneliness is more of the internal thoughts you have, right? This, the constant struggle with imposter syndrome. It's really this internal battle with yourself. And you can't really get help from someone else unless they also are a founder and they have experienced it, right? And can just be like, yeah, these thoughts suck. And so really what I found, the best group is actually professional athletes, right? So I've had the fortunate luck of interacting with NBA players, NFL players, and they have what this mental fitness built in, right? You have to, right? Like just imagine, right? Every time you're out on the field, you're playing, there's all these people, right? They care so much about the outcome of this game. And if you screw up and it's on you, right, they'll make sure you are very well aware of how bad you screwed that up, right? Like talk about pressure, right? And then it gets more and more as you get to, the Super Bowl, right? Like that's pressure. And not only that, during training season, right, they feel pressure just within their own teammates, because who's going to be on the, who's going to play, who's not going to play, right? The whole thing is determined. And so that's the hardest part, is this competitiveness, this mental fitness, right? Of just constantly reminding yourself to pick your, and it's so hard because it's so easy to say, right? Like pick yourself up, do your gratitude book, all this stuff. And it's like, yeah. But when you're really feeling crappy, tell me how well that is working, to pull yourself out of it. And so that's really where the loneliness comes in, and the media doesn't help, right? Because the media makes it seem like there's all these founders doing really great, amazing things, raising a crap ton of money. Their companies are just growing so much faster than yours, right? There's people that I beat in pitch competitions that have raised more money than I have. And that's just what the heck? How does that work? You gave money.
But you have the real people.
And so that's actually been a big part of this year for me, is learning that mental fitness and skill sets that the professional athletes use, right? The extreme athletes, right? Those guys who are climbing, right? Alex Honnold from Free Solo, right? Climbing a mountain with no, with no equipment. It's like they have something in their head that they're tapping into. And that's the same thing that entrepreneurs need to learn and tap into as well. That's where I would say but it's once you realize that, then it's oh, it's not that lonely. There's actually a lot of people at this really high level that's figured out how to handle their emotions. And the experience is still the same, right? And that's really where the hardship is. And of course there's, internal frustrations that I feel sometimes with my team and myself, right? I'm like, did I just make a whole mistake of the way I hire? Is this actually working in my favor, or is this blowing up in my face? And so, there's a lot of self-doubt, right? But again, one of my, I wouldn't say life coaches, but one of my coaches, is saying if you have this feeling, that's good. That's a good sign, right? Because it means you're pushing forward and you're really pushing something new out there, and you'll see the benefits of it. And so just constantly reminding yourself, nothing lasts forever. And the Indigo campaign was probably the most stressed I've ever been. In between that campaign, I was also starting my seed round fundraising efforts, right? So two very stressful things at the same time. And in my head, I'm like, man, if I screw both of these up, that's it. We're over. Are you serious? This is it. This can't be it, And so just this immense amount of pressure, and then really being able to somehow giving yourself a chance to breathe, and which is so hard, right? Because we're so connected these days. When we relax, you're not truly relaxing, because your phone's still there, or something's still distracting you. And for me to truly relax is being in the desert. So I'm in Utah. The desert's great place to be. There's nothing works, right? Electronics don't work out there. And you're literally just out there with nature. And I'm so still right now, I'm so desperate to get out there, because I just need that decompression, just time, right? Just that just one day of that, and then they'll help reset and refocus everything
and come back. No, yeah, no, it's good to hear that. It's you're human, right? I think all the feelings and all this, what you're going through, and I'm sure our listeners, can reflect or actually say, yes, I'm there as well. It's just being human and not saying, oh, I'm just going like automation, right? That's not what's happening, and especially not with a startup. So that was a lot of, I don't know if they call it the other side of being an entrepreneur. So let's talk about some of the fun stuff. What makes you proud, and where you were like, oh my God, this was an aha moment, or I never thought this will happen. What have you experienced?
So it's 2022. So 2020 is when I took the leap, right? And so again, came from a technical background. I know a lot of PhDs, a lot of doctors, a lot of engineers, so we can build and do any research type project, right? But when it came to investors, entrepreneurs, I knew no one, right? Like even my family network, even my wife's family network that I thought did, turns out no one really knows anyone. And I was like, oh, dang, I need to go build a network. And so what's so cool is, and this is like the advice I give everyone, is the biggest thing you have to do is believe in yourself. That's the biggest hurdle. You believe in yourself and you jump full in knowing that I know who I am and I know that I have what it takes to do this, right? And so for us, it was 2020, we get into, or last year, we get 2021. So tail end of 2020, I quit my full-time job, right? I had this really cushy software engineering job. I could just do that for the rest of my life. But of course, I'm not happy, right? I'm bored. And I was looking for a new challenge. And so I left this cushy job. I had enough savings saved up essentially so I could like have 2 years of runway. I was like, okay, if I can't figure out 2 years, software engineering is always there, right? You can always go back to that. So we got into an accelerator called the Founder Institute, and that part of that was imposter syndrome, right? I just really wanted to know, like, do I have what it takes? Can I do this? And also grow my network, right? Founder Institute, if I do very well, I'll get a network built in. And so what was cool was the Founder Institute is a very competitive accelerator where you get kicked out. So if you can't keep up, you get kicked out, you get dropped. So the program began with 130 people. We ended up with 23 at the very end, right? And I was the number one in the class. Like I beat out people with MBAs. I beat out ex-CEOs. I beat out all these people that I thought like, shouldn't you, like, what are you doing here? Like I thought you guys knew all this stuff. And that was a good signal of, oh yeah, okay, believe in myself. And what's so cool is to see how far you can go when you believe in yourself, right? So within a year, we got fully funded, right? With an amount that I would never have dreamed of, right? Like you looked back at my original assignments, what I was writing down, and I was like, oh, it'd be so cool if we raised 250,000 in our pre-seed round. I got that in like 2 weeks after graduating FI, right? And I was like, I guess I should aim higher. So let's do 500K, and we got that. And I was like, let's get higher. And then I remember being on the audience side of these pitch competitions way back in the day, right? And being like, it would be so cool if I was on the stage one day pitching and competing like this, right? And then to be one of the winners of that pitch competition and beating out all the companies that I was looking up to, right? And you're like, dang, like look how far we've come, And so it's so crazy. Like, I think we forget how much time we have because it feels like we don't, right? A lot. And a lot of it, we do have a lot of time in the day, right? And that's when people are always asking me like, how do you do all this? I'm like, there's a lot of time in the day. It's all about like optimizing and really, picking out what's worth your energy and effort and what's just like worth passing off to someone else or paying for, right? But there is a lot of time. And with that time, you can accomplish a lot, especially if you're running your own schedule, right? And so quickly, within a year, I went from nobody in the Utah startup scene to being invited to all these amazing events, to being, everyone's trying to come talk to me. And it's just this really crazy, surreal feeling because you're just like, what? Like I was nobody a year ago. And here I am talking with essentially all these people that I had on pedestals, right? Of like, I would love to meet you. And now they're one of my investors. And you're like, I couldn't have ever dreamed this. And now I'm on the side of dream big. Dream as big as you possibly can. Because you never know. You never know, right?
Yeah, you never know. Oh, that's so cool. No, and I think sometimes not that you need to write it down, right? But if you write down some of these wins, right, or the feeling that you had, And then when you look back, you're like, oh my God, right? All this good stuff happened. Because sometimes you can not that you're drowning, but you can be like, oh my God, this is my next mountain I need to have to climb, or the next 2 mountains I need to climb. And it can feel impossible. But when you look back and reflect, you can say, okay, yeah, right. It is, let me dream big. And then
Yes.
go that way.
Yeah, exactly. And I love your analogy because that's actually, so I'm a big backpacker, right?
Yeah.
And that's exactly the experience I get from backpacking with the entrepreneurship, right? Is exactly that, is if you're doing a very hard backpacking trip, you're constantly thinking of the goal, right? Of like, oh, I got to summit this mountain, or like I got to do these 3 mountains today, and to hit this goal. And that's like, like that's so much elevation I have to climb, so much elevation I have to drop, like over and over again. And you're just like, oh, that sucks, right? You can easily talk yourself out of it and make it so awful. But if you just focus on more of what's in front of you, right? Just taking each step at a time, and then really enjoying, this is hard, but enjoying the journey, that's what makes the trip worth it, right? And then the next thing you know, you're on top of the mountain and you're like, whoa, I'm already up here. And you look down and you're like, dang, like, look at all this. Like, I just summited like a 14,000 foot mountain, and I like, that wasn't that bad,
Yeah.
But if you think about at the beginning of like, oh, like it's going to be 23 miles today to do that. Like, like,
yeah, you're giving up before you started.
Yeah.
That's not you. So looking back, if you should give yourself like an advice and look at yourself, for like maybe 10 years ago, what kind of advice will you give yourself?
It really is just what I've kind of mentioned already. Believe in yourself and dream big, right? So 10 years ago, I was heading to medical school. Right. I was interviewing at medical school. I was trying to become a doctor. And why? Because I haven't really thought about what I want to do with my life. And so doctors seem to make a lot of money. So that sounds good, right? Yeah, let's do that. No. Especially at that level, right? I'm competing with people who are like, no, I'm really into being a doctor. This is why. And I'm like, oh, those are really good reasons. Why am I here? Like, that's not, I don't feel that way. And so, I decided to stop because I was like, I'm miserable. Like, in order for me to continue going, I have to tap into something that doesn't exist. And right, I have to work 10 times harder than everyone else. And I don't even care about this. And so for me, that was my transition, and music has always been a big passion of mine. And so, of course, my parents loved it when I was like, I'm not going to be a doctor. I'm going to go be a musician. You love that, right? That's going to be a big change.
That's like,
but what I found is, and this is what I'm saying, right? Be curious, be willing to explore, because when I was creating, when I was in my band, I ran it like a business.
Yeah.
Right. All my band members were founders, and I managed it and I ran it really well. And I start picking up like, oh, I have like a knack for this business side of everything. And as a musician, I remember being like, oh, one day it'd be so cool to own a recording studio. And I even had dreams about it. And I would just wake up being like, that's so silly. Like, what am I doing? Like, I'm not going to own a recording studio. That's not part of my lifeline. And guess what? I own a recording studio today, and so it's one of those, like, you never really know unless if you can't vision it, then it's never going to happen. Right. But and it's one of those, I know it's crazy and silly, but it's really like, if you can really put something out there, a target, a goal down there, and really go after it, you will get there. Right. Like, there's no doubt in my mind. And it's just, not giving up, right? That's another part of it, is this isn't easy, right? This is really hard. It's like, we work hard. Like, people talk about work-life balance, and I'm like, what's that? Like, I don't even know what that is, right? Like, all of my life right now is work, and I have
do you sleep? That's my next question. Do you sleep? No. Okay.
Yeah, right. I eat one meal a day, right? I eat it's like I've optimized that part of my life, right? And so, but no, I do actually get sleep. That's very, very important.
Yeah,
I actually get exercise. That's also very important.
Yeah.
But when it comes to 10 years ago, the advice is just don't be afraid, right? Like, just know how absurd it is. Like, I remember, so 10 years ago, same thing. I wanted to learn programming. I was watching Silicon Valley, the show on HBO, right? And I was like, man, I really want to learn how to program. And I want to do what these guys are doing. This looks like a lot of fun. And now, ended up learning how to program, right? And so it's one of those, like, another ambition of mine one day is to get my pilot license. And so it's just like, that's going to happen. It's just more about when do I have time to go get that, right? And so, and it's okay, right? I think a lot of people grew up being taught, like, you need to be a specialist. You can only do like one thing, get really, really good at it. I'm on the side of like, what? Like, you have this one life, at least, in my opinion, you got this one life, and you're just going to do this one thing the whole time. Like, that's insane, right? Like, do everything you want to do, anything, everything, like anything that you were passionate about as a kid, revisit it and get back into it. One of the saddest things that I see, especially on the music side, is older individuals who always tell me like, oh, I wish I could learn piano, or I wish I could learn drums. And I'm like, why can't you? You're like, you can afford a piano. You can afford, you're independent, you have money and you have time. And and I'm like, what's holding you back, right? And they're just like, well, isn't it like just, like I'm out. I'm like, no, you can learn. Like, why can't you learn this? And for me, it's this almost this like block that gets put into our brains as we get older, right? Like, oh, we go through this rigid school system, and then after college, a lot of people just kind of stop learning, and for me, I'm like, no, like you should constantly be learning new things, reading and exploring and just experiencing. And that's really when, great ideas come out, innovation, and even, things that you're passionate about that you never knew. And that's the people that I love to hang out around is, I'm sure everyone does, right? Anyone that has a lot of passion about anything, you're just immediately attracted to, and you're like, I want to just like vibe off your energy.
No, I get it. I think I met where there's never a good time to start something. You can say, oh yeah, I'll do that next week or next year. Next year you will be even busier, or something else has happened. So the best time to start is today, right? It's like, you should have planted that tree maybe 30 years ago, but you didn't. So plant it today.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the way
and
to
it's
go.
Okay to make mistakes, right? I think that's the biggest fear point is people have gotten comfortable with not failing, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, you're gonna suck at the piano. It's gonna sound awful, and it's gonna be like this really awful noise
I
for
can
a
hear
really
the violin
long time. Yeah. And your family's gonna hate you for it, but guess what? You're gonna get over that, and all of a sudden you're gonna be playing that song that you've been trying to play forever, and you're gonna be really good at it. And that's what's so cool is that'll happen within a year, right? You'll see that happen really quickly. And that's what I'm saying about like time. People kind of lose like perception of how long it takes to like get, and and I see it with everyone, right? Everyone just wants to become the master at whatever new thing. And it's just like, no, and that's the same as with entrepreneurship. The journey isn't the end goal, right? Of, oh, Krado's now successful. We're established. We're, making millions and millions of dollars a year. We're worth billions of dollars. We're done, right? If you actually talk to ex-entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs who've done that, what they miss is the journey, right? That's what they miss the most. The end is like the boring part. You're just like, oh, like, what do I do now? I guess I'm done.
Oh, you won't slow down. So if somebody wants to reach out to you, Eric, how can they find you, or where can they find you?
So I hate social media, but the only social media that I do use is LinkedIn. And so please reach out on LinkedIn. My name is Eric Lowe, so ERIC, and last name just LO. And please feel free to connect. The one other thing that really brings me a lot of passion and purpose is helping other individuals who are a little bit lost or need a little bit of guidance, go and chase after their dreams, right? And so that's actually how I own a coffee company. Is like the founder of that was going full in on this coffee roasting business, but I saw that he had, a couple issues on the business side. And so I got involved to help him make his dream successful. So please reach out. I'm always happy. And that's something that I will always dedicate time to. I know everyone's like, you're not going to have time for this as you get busy, but for me, this is the most valuable thing that I can make time for, is to help other individuals who have ambitions and goals get the guidance they need. And also, right back to the loneliness, talk to me about it. That's why I'm happy to expose the ugly side of the underbelly, right? The not glamorous side of entrepreneurship, because we need to normalize it, right? This is like, for me, the loneliness came from like, oh, like, why am I so bad at this? Everyone seems to be like raising so much money and doing all this. Like, I suck, right? And it's like, oh no. When you talk to them, they're like, oh no, it took me
I've been there. Yeah.
But the media just made it seem like I got done in like 2 weeks.
Yeah, I only showed the shiny.
I'm like, that's just doing a disservice to everyone. So if I'm very, I think for me, I'm very authentic, and so I'm an open book, and you'll get the truth from me, and you won't get any, the glamour or any of that. It's like, I'll tell you the real reality of everything.
Both sides. I like that. That's honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I'll make sure in the show notes, I'll put a link, as well to your LinkedIn and also to Krado so they can see that one. And you can also go on the website on the Mind Innovation and see under the podcast. So plenty of opportunities to reach out to you, Eric. So Eric, this was great. I really had a blast here. And I think, just the end for me here is just dream big. That's just, that's my word of the day.
Exactly. And, exactly like your podcast is less than a year old, right?
Yeah, a little bit more than a year, but still.
Okay.
Yeah.
But exactly the same thing, right? You didn't have experience recording audio and editing, and here you are.
Yeah. It's a learning and it's a journey, and I love it. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you again for having me. It's such a pleasure to be on the show. And let me know how I can be of help in the future.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to this episode of Mind Innovation Podcast. New episodes are dropping bi-weekly, so make sure you're following wherever you get your podcast. You can find me on LinkedIn, search for Sannah Vinding. You can also find me on YouTube, search for Mind Innovation, or go to my website, sannahvinding.com or mindinnovation.com. Stay curious, keep learning.